Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of George Reviews. And this episode, kind of special, kind of not. I don't know. But today we will be talking about the Chris Stuckmann debut film, his big debut film from Neon called Shelby Oaks. Written and directed by him, story by him and his lovely wife, Samantha Liz. Let's get into it right here on George Reviews. So, Chris Stuckmann, what to say about Chris Stuckmann? You could say that I grew up on Chris Stuckmann, though as much as a 30-something-year-old who first discovered YouTube film criticism can grow up on Chris Stuckmann, that's kind of my origin story to this guy. I think it was the Only God Forgives analyst review that really hooked me into his work. I really love his analyst reviews. I wish he'd bring him back, but that's another topic for another time. But the guy has been on YouTube for a long time, and he's discussed various films of good and bad. Lately, he's just reviewing films that he has praises for, which is totally fine. That's his choice. On the other hand, think that no film is above criticism, and Shelby Oaks definitely isn't above that criticism. But we'll get into that. But needless to say, Chris Stuckmann's a hero of mine. He was big influential on me to create this channel and to do what he does. To talk about films of varying degree and varying quality, and that's I have to applaud him for that. And a few years ago, he started a Kickstarter for this film of Shelby Oaks, and he exceeded those goals to about $1 million and some change. And he was able to make his movie, and with the help of Mike Flanagan, he was able to get Neon distribution, and they're really distributing this to a degree, I would say, maybe a little bit to a detriment to the film, because sometimes overhypeness can cause certain reactions to kind of happen. I try to separate the marketing from the film. I just like to go in. That's why I hate pull quotes in films. That's why I don't like hearing what critics have to say about films. I kind of prefer them to just show the trailer on its own and let the film speak for itself. And that's kind of what I wanted to go to within Shelby Oaks. I stayed away from reviews. I stayed away from YouTube videos for the most part, critiquing this film. And a lot of it goes on my algorithm feed. I'm not going to lie, a lot of it did come out and with clickbaity titles trashing this film, and I wanted to have my own unique experience, and I feel like I had the most unique experience as I could. Someone who doesn't live under a rock, who is aware of film criticism on this platform, and so I went and saw Shelby Oaks. And so Shelby Oaks, what is Shelby Oaks about? So it is a found footage mystery horror film. Some of it is found footage, but it mixes in traditional horror, kind of balances that out. Really, the first 20 minutes are the found footage, and then everything else is found footage is sprinkled throughout. But for the most part, it is, I would call, a traditional horror film in terms of its genre, in terms of how it's executed and everything. But the film follows Mia, who's looking for her sister Riley Brennan, who was a host of this popular YouTube show back in 2008, The Paranormal Paranoids. It's catchy style for a ghost hunting show, and she disappeared without a trace along with her fellow hosts of the show. And so she is going out of her way to search for her sister under any means necessary, and whatever evidence she has to cover up, whatever things that she has to do, she is going at it alone. And I thought that was a really unique premise. Honestly, I have not seen a lot of found footage films besides some of the Paranormal Activity films and found footage 3D, which I actually really enjoyed, for what it was. And for the most part, Shelby Oaks, I gotta say, I was a little underwhelmed. I kind of wanted more from it in certain areas. I wouldn't call it a bad film, but I wouldn't call it a great film either. It's kind of in between for me. Kind of mid, not so unique. Unique in its premise, and there's potential there. But the execution was not so unique, and it has a lot of issues, I would say, for the most part. And, I'm just coming from a big Chris Stuckmann fan. I have nothing against Chris Stuckmann. I'm so incredibly happy and proud of him. They got to make the film he wanted to make. And you can definitely see the influence of contemporary horror from Ari Aster's Hereditary to a lot of M. Night Shyamalan. So there's definitely that influence there, and sometimes to a fault and a detriment, and sometimes a really unique kind of combination of that inspiration from him and kind of unique and kind of mixing his own kind of Chris Stuckman-y, kind of flavor within that sauce. I could tell this would be a film from Chris Stuckmann, watching his videos, watching the filmmaking he implements in his videos sometimes, especially on his Halloween specials. So yeah, I can definitely see that this has some Chris Stuckmann flavor, but a lot of flavors from other artists. And hey, as filmmakers, we get inspired by other filmmakers, and we like to invert that as tribute. They say steal from the best or pay homage from the best, I would like to kind of say. And yeah, as someone who has dabbled in filmmaking myself, I have made a feature with no money, and it wasn't great. It was a disaster, but I still fucking made it. I can kind of tell where Chris is coming from, and I really respect the hell out of that. But my initial thoughts are, I kind of like parts of it, but I have issues with a lot of it, is this kind of short in a nutshell version, I would say. But technical aspects, this film is technically great though. The cinematography is mwah. The sound design is mwah. The acting is really great. Everything about it, technically really works. A lot of the cinematography is kind of spoiled in the trailer. Some of the great moments are kind of spoiled in that trailer, and there are moments of levity, there are moments that kind of drag, and there are moments that are somewhat disturbing on paper, but the execution just wasn't quite there for me, but we'll get into that. But yeah, as far as technically, this is a beautiful looking film. This is a very ambitious looking film, especially for something shot on $1.1 million, which I know people say that's like a low budget for Hollywood filmmaking and independent filmmaking. Something like Jim Cummings' Thunder Road, which is made for like $400,000 to $500,000 and looks great. It is well acted, it is well written. It is a masterclass in independent filmmaking, not even low budget filmmaking. It is a great film, and that's kind of what I wanted with Shelby Oaks. But unfortunately, Shelby Oaks kind of suffers in its pacing and its writing and not everything, but in its influence and kind of playing it safe. I would say I wanted a lot more from Shelby Oaks and what it was willing to give me. And I know a lot of people were saying this is like the worst film of the year. This is terrible. Why would you do this? If I was a Kickstarter backer, I'd want a refund. But no, I really don't think it's bad in that sense. I just feel like it is a little underwhelming and a little bit not quite there for me. And some of my background is I'm not that big on traditional horror. I like psychological horror. The Shining is my favorite horror film. I would say I like a lot of A24 contemporary horror. I like a psychological sense to it. I like a good character study, and that's kind of what I wanted here. There are little sprinkles of character studies in terms of the lead character Mia, but I really wanted to see her obsession of finding her sister. I want her to go to lengths, and she does go to some lengths by receiving a mini DV tape, which is a nice touch, Chris. I like that. Someone who used to shoot on mini DV in my own filmmaking, I think that was really cool. I really like that. She receives a tape that has a lot of like different things that are evidence, and she kind of hides that from the police because she doesn't, trust the police. It's not like a deep journey into finding that, it's in the trailer. There's someone who shows up to her front door, says that she let me go, and he shoots himself in front of her, which was a great fucking sequence. I love the shooting, literally, the shot composition, the slow motion, the, blood on the face, even though she still has the blood on her face well into watching the tape after the police leave. It's kind of weird, but I can overlook that. That's not like a huge disservice or anything. It looks really cool, and I like the, feel of that. I think the whole atmosphere of Shelby Oaks works really well for the most part. There are some things that are kind of felt like borrowed, where she's doing research on old newspapers, very reminiscent of a X-Files episode, Squeeze, where Mulder's going through old newspaper clippings at a library to kind of, discover who this Eugene Toombs is. But this whole thing kind of felt like an elongated X-Files episode. There's definitely a supernatural element to it. Full disclosure, I'm not really into supernatural stuff and horror, not that I'm scared of it. It just doesn't always work for me. It didn't really work for me in Hereditary, and it definitely doesn't work for me here. Some of it is creepy and well shot, and there's pieces of clues and things that I would like to, revisit Shelby Oaks and kind of look into, and, kind of just see how it all connects, if it does connect. Ultimately, that part didn't really work for me. And there are certain things, she kind of goes off on her own, which I like. I like a good rogue detective, even if she's not an actual detective, she's doing detective-y things. And she, goes off on her own. She goes to a prison late at night, which people seem to have an issue with. I did not have an issue with that. Like that she went on her own. There's definitely moments with rabid dogs, I would say, that I thought were kind of creepy, but the execution of some of that, especially in a CGI sense, I think it was CGI, didn't really land. It was definitely hard to take seriously at times. I didn't chuckle or anything, but I thought it was a little silly. In moments. And then there's something that kind of just falls into her lap that kind of unravels the whole mystery, which I gotta say, that's a nitpick of mine, but I just, when something falls into a character's lap like that so randomly and without connecting so many dots, I mean, she did, it kind of, things kind of lead her to there, but she didn't realize where she was going. I don't know, man. That didn't really work for me. It was just really too convenient. And this thing is filled with old horror tropes. Again, I'm not a horror film expert. I've seen first entries of a lot of horror franchises, but not the whole franchises. I will say that much. And yeah, it just really bugged me. And, and then it leads to some disturbing climaxes within the film. And though on paper, I think those are good, interesting, compelling things, just in the execution, it was a bit faulty, was a bit silly to me. I like what he was going for. It did feel very Hereditary, especially in the conclusion. Not to spoil anything, I'm not getting into detail spoilers. Some people are, in fact, which I think is stupid. I think people should let this film breathe in its release and let people discover for themselves and talk about it without spoiling it for people who might be interested. That's just my thing. I don't really like to go into full-on spoilers, but anyways, I digress. There is a lot of good atmosphere in Shelby Oaks. There is a lot of good acting. I like the performance of Mia. I like the performance of Riley. We get a little cool bit with Keith David, wow, that's fucking amazing, man. Like, you were able to book him. That's just, Keith David is fucking awesome, okay? He's fucking awesome. And if he's in your film, he makes it fucking awesome. And I enjoyed his performance. I thought he did a really great job. And I just, the whole cast, the acting, I didn't really have any issue with. It's just really in the script. I feel that maybe he should have did more passes on it. I know that Mike Flanagan gave him notes and things that he maybe rewrote. So I'm not sure how much influence Mike Flanagan had on this project. I don't know know how much is Chris Stuckmann and how much is Mike Flanagan. I haven't seen any Mike Flanagan films, so I cannot say this felt Mike Flanagan in this way or that way. I don't know. I would like to know, though. Chris, if you ever want to talk about it, hit me up at Georgetown Ray. And I would like to see Chris fully unhinged. I would like to see him have final cuts on something. I don't know if he got final cut on this. Like I said, I don't know. I can only speculate, and that's all anyone can do is speculate. But I would like to see him fully unleashed. And I feel like there are moments of unleashment in Shelby Oaks, but it just kind of fell a little bit flat for me. I gotta be honest. It just kind of fell really flat, unfortunately, in the execution, but the atmosphere is there, the tone is there, the acting is there, the cinematography is beautiful. Technically, it's all great, and it has some interesting moments in it. But ultimately, I don't really feel like I would want to revisit this a lot, but I'm curious to revisit it to kind of at least this 1 second watch to kind of see where all the pieces fit. I would compare it to my feelings on not a similar film, but a film that came out this year called Honey Don't by Ethan Coen. And it's like the pieces there are interesting, compelling, and they're great. They just don't really fit together, and the execution of those pieces, you're hammering them in, don't really fit in my opinion. But that's just me. And so I would probably give Shelby Oaks 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's definitely worth seeing. I think it's definitely creepy enough, but nothing extraordinary, unfortunately. And I feel like for your first feature, you should really just pull all your stops. And maybe that's what Chris was doing. Maybe this is the film he wanted to make, and I think that's really great. And sometimes as storytellers and as filmmakers, we want to go all out. We want to throw caution into the wind. We want to, tell the stories the way we want to tell them. I think if he accomplished that for himself, I think that's really amazing. That doesn't always translate well to major audiences. I have a problem with general audiences. I have a problem with the state of Hollywood and the state of mainstream cinema. There are always good films that come out every year, but they're few and far in between the generic slop that Hollywood brings us. This is not slop. This is not bad. Ultimately, I do have issues with this film, and I have no problem voicing those issues. I would like to see him succeed. I would like to see him make more films for Neon. Give him a 3-picture deal, or give him a 2-picture deal. Just give him something more to work with. Give him a chance. Give him, final cut. Let him really just explore himself as an artist. And Chris is no stranger or newbie to filmmaking, because he's been doing it since he was a kid. Longer than I've been trying to do it, and I mean, I've been out of practice for a long time, but still I have filmmaking ambitions, and this is very inspirational to me. And I just hope that he's proud. I think it's always good to be proud of a film, as long as it's from like a artist's point of view and not just like a slop together, boardroom movie or whatever. I think that he should be very proud. He should be, very, very happy that he was able to get something of his on the big silver screen. This is showing everywhere. This is being, I've been getting ads for it everywhere. I think that's great. I just feel like maybe the ads and marketing are overhyping it just a smidge or just a lot. And I just think it might not really do the film any favors once more people see it. I know people are exploding on Twitter saying it's crap, it's stupid, and blah blah blah. I really don't agree with that. But those are my thoughts on Shelby Oaks. What did you think of Shelby Oaks? Did you love it? Did you not love it? What did you think about it? What would you rate it? Are you a big fan of Chris Stuckmann like me? Let me know down there in the comments below. Seriously, I would love to get more of a mature discussion about this film. But as always, please like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. My name is George Ray. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Please remember to keep calm, keep cool, keep chill, embrace great cinema, and hey, embrace Shelby Oaks. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, peace out.